What I'd like to do, I'd like to start with you telling me a little bit about how did you get into optometry? How did you get into this profession?
Well, my mother.
Mm-hmm.
My mother felt that it was, she's from the old country, Poland,
Okay.
my mother and father. But my mother's goal in life is to make sure her children, three of us, got college educations. Education to her was primary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had two older sisters, and myself, the joy of her life, her son, that came along after two girls. And it's a short story. Should I tell you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. My mother and my sisters went to a seminar telling people what was good as far as education. What could they go to for in education? And
What was the approximate year of this? When was this?
Probably 1940.
Okay.
And they went to a seminar and listened to these people present their different professions
Mm-hmm.
that they were in.
What were some of the other ones?
There were two of them that they wrote down that were good for me, they thought, was optometry and chiropody. Did they call it chiropody?
Chiropody, right. It was now
Chiropody.
chiropractic,
Right.
yeah.
And
you weren't there. This was
No, I
this was
wasn't
your
there.
mother and sisters figuring out what little Al should do. Huh?
Right.
Okay.
the little brother.
Right, little brother.
So I know that I, at that time, decided to look into the right place, and optometry won hands down.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I was going to school in New York, and I went to the first school of chiropody
Uh-huh.
on 125th Street in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I opened the door and walked into this big room where a lot of men or students working with patients.
Mm-hmm.
The smell knocked me out. That's an actual quote that I told my mother and my sisters. No way I could stay with that smell.
Uh-huh.
So I went to optometry.
That's a good thing. Where did you go?
Los Angeles School of Optometry in L.A.
And what were your choices back then? What were the different optometry schools? Wasn't there the Needles?
Yeah, there were other. There was Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
which was a good school, but they insisted I have physics, which I never took.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't go there. Then there was, where were the other schools? They were the old timers.
Well, you picked the Los Angeles school.
Yeah, I
then,
picked the Massachusetts. There were 7 choices.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that would take me would be optometry school in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know at the time, that Los Angeles school was nearly bankrupt.
Okay.
They never told me. But they had this guy, Ernie Hutchison, as president. And he ran the school very efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
brought it back to be on its feet, and that's where I went for a couple of years.
How long was the optometry school? Was it a 3-year program at that point, or
Well, no, actually it was a 4-year program.
4-year?
2 years to be spent in undergraduate work,
Mm-hmm.
and then the final 2 years for professional.
And the degree you actually got was a Bachelor of
Science.
Science in Optometry.
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
I finally got my OD.
When did you get that?
I don't really remember. They were just being good-hearted and said that those people that have a bachelor's science can now trade it in.
Trade it in, okay.
Did something that they changed it.
Did you get that through the Los Angeles school or through one of the other optometry schools later?
No. Oh, wait a minute. That was through Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, okay.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
Used to take a bus to go up to Massachusetts on the weekend. One weekend a month, I think, was something like that.
Yeah, you must have taken some courses. I know my father was one who went through Columbia, and he had a master's of science in optometry.
Right.
And then through SUNY, his involvement with SUNY as a faculty member,
Right.
got his OD degree. So,
Right. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
good.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah. Well, that's how you became an optometrist. Now, how did you get interested in going beyond what standard optometry is and getting involved in first visual training, vision therapy, and finally moving into vision enhancement?
What happened was I got bored with what I was doing because flipping dials and numbers on it, so on, and there wasn't anything specific you did with these numbers and so on. It was just introducing you to an area that I thought was important, but I don't know what the importance is or was. And so I decided to try another business.
Mm-hmm.
You'd never guess what it
Another
was.
business altogether. Right?
All together.
I thought I heard something. Was it chicken farming?
You heard it.
Okay, it was chicken farming.
It was. It was chicken farming in Newtown, Connecticut. We bought a farm with a barn on it, and we raised chickens. What do they call them? The small hen that Victor Borger used to.
Yeah. I don't know. The Cornish game hens?
Cornish game hen.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, they were little ones. They were their total weight at the time that they were slaughtered, their weight was probably about 18 ounces, 20 ounces. But I got into that, and that went blank because
How long did you do that?
about a year and a half.
And during that time, did you know optometry at all?
Oh, no, I was into optometry. I would be in the office at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have to leave about 4. And, of course, my practice was not very good after that. But with the chicken, the market was very good. It all depends upon the market. If the market is good, you make money. If the market is no good, you lose money. So I made money enough to keep me in it, but then lost enough to say go bankrupt.
Okay.
And that's what we did. We went bankrupt. A friend of mine had a farm near me in Newtown, and we worked together in both our farms. We had 10, 12 farms under lease that when we brought our birds in, we would send them through this organization that was called Seventh Heaven Poultry. We'd send them through this organization that was called Seventh Heaven Poultry.
Oh, Seventh Heaven Poultry.
Don't ask me why.
At the height of all the chickens, how many chickens did you have?
It ran between 150 and 200,000 chickens.
200,000 chickens. How many help did you have? I mean, that sounds like a tremendous amount of work. Sounds like a lot of noise, too.
No, the noise was minimal. But we had 3 people that worked full-time that went around from barn to barn and check on it. Also to feed them in some cases when the owner who had the lease wasn't available. He'd let us know, and we'd have one of our men go out and do that. The catching of the chickens and transferring them to the slaughterhouse was the next step there, because now these are broilers. They're bigger than the Cornish hen. And these broilers were usually 2.5, 3 pounds live. We had to weigh them in order to get the proper size that each place wanted for this. And we we sold our chickens until the point we didn't have any more money to be able to.
So now back to optometry. Then what was the trigger? Okay, we got into the hens. That didn't work out.
Mhm.
You were doing basically general optometry to that point.
Right,
It wasn't fulfilling. Then
No.
something happened.
right.
What was that?
I met Ann Sutton Nichols.
Ann Sutton Nichols.
Right.
Tell me about her.
Ann Sutton Nichols was an optometrist from California.
Hmm.
She was, I don't know, I guess you might call it spiritual, and involved in religion to a degree.
Most people, Al, when they think of Ann Sutton Nichols,
Yeah.
first they don't know Ann Sutton Nichols. All they know is the AN cards.
Right.
And many people go, oh, AN cards. Oh, I don't know what those are. Ann Nichols, Ann Sutton Nichols. Those were some cards that she made for use in the stereoscope.
With Keystone.
With Keystone, right,
Right.
right. But that's about all they know.
Well, that's about all that they need to know, because she went off on a tangent a lot in the religious area and lost a lot of people that were, there weren't a lot of people. There were people that didn't particularly care for that part and dropped out.
For that part of it, yeah.
Yeah, and dropped out because of it.
So she mixed the religious part with the optometry.
Right,
Right.
right.
But tell me about the optometry part, because she was obviously triggered some new thinking in you.
She did, but like the problem, like the general problem in optometry, they were doing things and having results, and were not applying it to their practice or way of doing anything, and it became like a mystery. If you want to know, you have to go ask the boss, because he's the only one who knows what it's all about. So she didn't quite know about it either, but she did know there was good things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as far as we got. She used to come to, she got married in Boston. She used to come to Boston and give lectures. So, and I went to all of them whenever they came, whenever she had them.
Mm-hmm.
I would drive to Boston and get there probably about 4 or 5 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
and stay till about 12, 1 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
and drive home.
She did a lot of work with mirrors and how people saw things in a mirror. Hal Wiener had given a number of papers on, was it zig and zag?
Oh, yeah.
And that different styles of people would do things differently with the different figures. Did you do some of this, or?
No, I have the what is it? Not a lion, a donkey, a jackass. One
Yeah,
of them.
zig and zag. They look
That's
like
right.
some kind of animals with stripes going one way and stripes going another way.
Yeah. Well, the fact of the matter is I look at it now, I am convinced that whatever she did as far as optometry was concerned was a byproduct, and that it never went anyplace.
Mm-hmm.
Why? That I really don't know.
So these lectures you went to sort of triggered you to begin to move in a different direction.
Definitely.
But you didn't get a foundation from it. You
Right.
just got sort of pushed in another direction.
Right.
Where was the next step in this?
That's a good question.
Well, you mentioned at one point you became yourself a patient.
Of Emil
Emil
Franke.
Franke.
Right.
How did that come about? Because he's in Washington, you're up here. How did your paths cross?
I was to a lecture or a seminar given by Dick Appel, Dr. Appel and Dr. Strapp. And Emil was there too. And trying to think who the speaker was at that time. But whoever it was, an optometrist, I think it may have been Emil that said, why don't you do it? If it's that good and that great, why don't you do it? I said, I will. Will you take me on as a patient?
Mm-hmm.
And he took me, and turns out 7 other people.
From that group?
I don't know where they came from.
Uh-huh. Other optometrists?
They were optometrists.
So it was a group of 8 of you. And
there were 2 groups of 4 and 4,
mm-hmm.
and that we would go to Washington every other week
mm-hmm.
and spend 2 hours with Emil, my partner at that time, and he was with me. We went down there, and every 2 weeks, and and he gave us things to do. I didn't understand what half of them meant, but there was something there that said to me, there's something good there, and I want to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I got in touch with Emil. We set up these appointments.
You went about once every 2 weeks?
Yeah, every other week.
How long did you go?
About a little over a year.
Mm-hmm. A little over a year. Were you given many things to work on or to practice between sessions?
It was up to us if we practiced.
And things you did on yourself, and were there some things you did with some of your patients as well?
I know there were times that I worked with the patient because in my office, I would work with one patient while Len worked with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd switch after 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We'd switch, and I'd go take what she had. She took mine. She worked with the home practices,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with in-offices practice that they couldn't do at home because most of them used lenses, prisms, colors,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that I felt would be useful.
At one point you mentioned having some interaction with Elliot Forrest.
Right.
What was the nature of that?
Friendship.
A friendship.
Yeah. The person who bought his practice,
Right. Lisa.
Lisa
Kogan. Yeah.
right, she is a patient of mine, and she is one of the few, I think, that is carrying on the same type of things that she did as practices.
Mm-hmm.
She gives to her patient, and she's having success.
Mm-hmm.
She called me the other day and told me that she made a speech at the, was it January meeting?
Yeah, at the Skeffington Symposium in Washington.
Right, yeah. That she felt it went over.
Mm-hmm.
It went over good. That's
So
fine.
she's taken some of what you worked with her,
Right,
and then she's been applying that to her own patients.
right,
Yeah.
right. That was the point, that they're going to learn to do it by doing.
Mm-hmm.
But from that came the realization to me that the only way you can learn is by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do it, you're only talking about something that you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And
You have to experience something from the inside to actually then be able to apply it in some way.
you're getting deep into something. I don't know if you know how deep, but that something that you're doing at that time, for it to help this individual, they have to do it and experience it. And when they experience it, then they know more of what their patients are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually the first place to go is to find out how much the individual, how truthful is the individual to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Self-honesty and self-truth become very vital in this, because you have to make judgments about yourself, and that's where people don't want to go.
So one of your recommendations then to a new student, a new graduate, somebody who's just coming to this, would be become a patient, go through this yourself,
Right,
have it change who you are and your life,
right.
then you can begin to apply this and help this to others.
To help other people.
And do it in an honest and open way.
Right,
Right.
right. The learning how to learn is basic to knowing how to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but you first have to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't learn it any other way than experience it. If you talk about it, it's not the same thing without experiencing.
There has to be some talk.
Well, there has to be talk, but the thing is that you both have to be on the same level somehow. I can be on any level because I've gone through it.
Mhm.
But these people that come to me as patients, I have to take them through some tests and from that decide what I want them to do.
Mhm.
Now, the tests that I'm talking about that we take as optometrists, I know I do, I don't know how many others do, but our findings that incorporate esophoria, exophoria, hypophoria. Also, another aspect of that is size.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many optometrists will ask their patients, is there a difference between monocular between each eye?
Mm-hmm. In their perception of the size of the image they see,
Right.
this becomes a critical thing in how you're working with a patient is take a look at how this looks, take a look at how this looks.
Yeah.
Are you perceiving the same size?
No,
Or what are the subtle differences between these?
no,
No.
no.
Then tell
Do
me.
you see there are two separate images.
Yeah.
Do you find anything that's different about them?
Okay.
It's the difference you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they tell you they're both exactly the same size, then you got a plus.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get that.
Yeah.
You get a difference in size. If one is larger, one is smaller. The question came to my mind at that point, if they are different in size, what happens visually, number one, and how do they fuse them?
Mm-hmm.
How can you fuse a larger and a smaller? So they don't. What they do is they make up their own method of seeing.
Mhm.
This is experience in learning how to learn, because they learn their own way
Right.
to do this. And it's pretty hard to change them from their own way because it's been successful to a degree.
Yeah.
So you have to show them where it's not good
Mm-hmm.
and become more honest with themselves in everything they do, not only the size of the image, but the size, the distance. How can you fuse two things that are like this?
Mm-hmm.
And so the key to getting them to make change is to do the practices monocularly. All home practices were given to be practiced monocularly. If you do this eye with 3 minutes, you do this eye with 3 minutes, and so on. And in that way, they automatically learn how to fuse the two on their own and have the right degree of depth and size.
Is it safe to say that one of the major things or goals that you want a person to work towards is to be a better observer, to be seeing what's really there in the image and the flow of light, to really see that, and then the better they can really see the world through one channel and the other channel, the better they can, in a harmonious way, use both together.
True. And what happens is the Fourier's inductions change to match their new way of seeing.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of insights do you get out of some of these phorias, and do you do them? Do you take a phoria in a standard way, in a different way? Do you follow the old OEP Black Book methodology in doing a phoria? Tell me a little bit about how you do them. They're obviously very significant to you.
Well, you do it. You do it the same way you do it now. Don't make any changes. Use what you've got now. Use the phorias inductions.
Tell me, so many people have come up with, I do it this way, I do it this way, I change this instruction. Give me as if you were doing a phoria on me. Tell me, just if you can almost travel back to the exam room.
It's a long time.
I know it has been.
But let me say that, for instance, in inductions, you find they're starting to make changes now. There are times in my practice I thought I had the answer. I was doing bunt ball. You're familiar with bunt ball? And then they change the bat and turn it different ways, do all the different things with it. And I found that this individual, his exophoria changed, and for the better. And I didn't do anything that I knew was different.
Tell me what you mean by for the better.
It was more the normal.
So it went from a higher exo down to a lower exo?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. For plano, for near. No, that's not what I mean. Not plano for near. It's
a low amount of exophoria.
Yeah, the amount of measuring the exophoria. Different ways of measuring. That's not the important part. The important part, how does it compare with
where
before,
they were.
Early, right, yeah. And it came more towards the norm, which is orthophoria and 6 exophoria.
6 exo, right.
And that worked out fine with that. So I said to myself, if bunt ball does that for this individual, and they'll change that and it made other things, how many other people will it work with?
Would bunt ball be the key?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So the next 15 patients had bunt ball. Not a whisper of a change.
Right. I read that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I read that. So you learn very quickly it wasn't the specific procedure that fixed anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. So I started looking for other things, and the things that I started to look for was size disparity, depth disparity.
How they perceive the size difference from one eye and to the other.
How, I don't know.
No, but we were looking at oh, I see it bigger here, I see it smaller here, I see it closer here, I see it further here. But you were having the patient compare how they saw it through the right eye versus how they saw it through the left eye.
Right. But see, different things happen. Sometimes what would happen at first, they see no changes. They start doing the practices at home, and they finally come in one day and say, hey, you know what? The right eye is larger than the left eye.
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't noticed it before. So that's a matter of perception as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the thing is, if the perception matches, it's got to have reality based to it, the truth, the honest self-truth. If you're trying to fudge it a little here and a little there, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do the whole thing. You have to do it right. And that's each eye separately.
When you did vision enhancement yourself, in fact, let's talk about vision enhancement for a moment. Why are you using those words, vision enhancement, versus many others in the profession either use all combinations of either vision therapy, vision training, visual therapy, or visual training.
You got them all.
Yeah, and you're using vision enhancement. So tell me why you've come to use those words.
The reason I did that was because I was looking for a word that meant more than training, more than making changes, or you turn the bolt this way and turn it that way. And in looking up in the dictionary and so on, enhancement fits the bill because we all have eyes. Well, let's say we all have eyes. And you want the eyes to do the proper thing as far as you're concerned, and you be able to use them to the best of their advantage, okay? Now, if you enhance something, you took something that's low down on the totem pole and build it up on their own so they go better without turning any bolts.
Okay.
The bolts are turned in the mind, and that's where seeing takes place. So therefore, now I'm working with the mind, which I never expected to work with. But you got to. There's no way of avoiding. You've got to work with the mind because seeing takes place in the mind, and you have to perceive it. But if you are not good at perceiving, like right now, my perception has changed drastically. I used to be able to look at something and remember it and bring it back so that it was like something that was new or whatever. I've lost that facility because my mind doesn't work that good.
Are you practicing some vision enhancement now to try to keep things working as best they can?
I can. I do. I do it in a number of ways. I do it in the things that I do. I was jogging in the house and doing all the things.
Real jogging or in your mind?
No.
Okay.
Real jogging. But it had to go to my mind because when I got uncomfortable with my heart and it hurting, then I knew I've overdone it. So I had to cut it back to the point where I could do it. And at first it was like doing it for 5 minutes, 4 minutes, whenever I could. And then it finally got up to about, 15, 20 minutes. And I had another heart attack. And so I now, as of the last month or so, I'm walking in the house for 20 minutes.
Good for you.
I can't go outside because of the weather. Cold weather sets off the heart. And my cardiologist at first thought I was nuts, but now he respects when I have something to say.
Study groups, though, were an important thing in your development.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Talk a little bit about what was involved in a study group, what you brought to the study group in terms of your own commitment, and some of what you took away from that. How it helped charge your batteries, how it helped you find new things to go for and work towards.
Well, just being among friends and being able to talk the same language, and there's some understanding, not that great. That study group was at the Gazelle Institute. I don't know if you know Abe Shapiro.
Yeah, Abe.
Ira Schwartz.
Yeah.
Gus.
Gus Forkiotis.
Yeah.
Dick Appel obviously was
Dick
involved
Appel
because he
and
was
John
faculty,
Streff.
and John Streff. Were the physicians, Ilge and Ames and Gazelle himself involved at all? No, so it was primarily just the optometrists.
Right.
And how often would you meet?
Once a month.
Once a month?
Yeah.
How long? 3 hours an evening?
3 hours, yeah.
Uh-huh.
The meeting was one where you brought up the topic you wanted to talk about that night. If it's something that everybody's interested, you keep talking. If they're not interested, you didn't.
People occasionally bring cases and talk through a case, and
yeah, they would do that on occasion. They would do that, yeah.
But it was more of a topical kind of discussion.
Yeah.
A lot of playing with retinoscopes, I would imagine, in a group like that.
It could be because John Streff is a great retinoscope man. And but no, it wasn't.
It wasn't always a lot of hands-on clinical stuff.
No, it wasn't. No.
Yeah.
We didn't need it.
Uh-huh.
It was our patients that needed it.
Yeah, but sometimes you play back and forth on each other and then come up with something new that then you would try with others.
But you see, then you have to be self-honest.
Okay.
Okay, so you're finding out now that this thing, the ramifications of this, are great. Far, no matter what you do, this type of work will help you.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it is, it will do it. If you want to.
Vision enhancement can work with anybody, anytime, anywhere, and help them improve the quality of their life.
Right. But they have to want to.
And they have to be honest with themselves.
Right.
In your book, you listed a whole number of ways that people have learned or gotten lazy of taking excuses to block some of these things.
Right. I think there are 12.
12 different ones, yes.
Yeah, right.
We don't have to go through each of them, but just give me an example of one or two of the kinds of things people do. I think one you had was people, they whined.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The whiners.
The whiners. You have beautiful names for some of these.
Yeah, well, this applied more to the younger ones.
Yes.
Younger
yes.
patients. The older patients, as an adult, either they're there because they want to be or they don't come.
Yeah.
And when they give me the reason that they don't want to do it because I don't want to commit myself to a year, then you're not for me. Go someplace else.
But still, you would start with somebody, and you would still get some of those old things back. The I can't do it.
Oh yeah, well that's
That was one
of
of
the
those.
kids. That's
But you get that with the adult too. There's that momentary I can't do that.
I just don't pay attention.
You let that go.
Yeah, well, why bring up something they've passed through in their own mind
Mm-hmm.
that way? And a number of people I have told this is not for you
Mm-hmm.
because they wouldn't practice the half hour I required 5 days a week
Mm-hmm.
for a year.
So you have home things that you assign them to do.
Yes.
They become the home practices. You
That's
want them
right.
to practice these things.
Yeah, those are the things that Len would go over with and see how they do.
Mm-hmm.
If they're able to keep their place when they're reading something or whatever, the letters or whatever, how well they do.
And your typical vision enhancement program lasts about a year.
The typical one is a year plus.
A year plus. The minimum is a year.
Minimum is a year.
Yeah.
I had one person for 4 years and I didn't know what the hell to give her anymore.
But she kept saying, take me further.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
wanted more.
I think we all have one or two patients like that.
Yeah,
So I can recall when I had an athlete, but take me further, take me further.
Yeah.
You didn't just use the terms vision enhancement. You've in the later years, added psycho-behavioral in front of it.
Right.
What was the significance? Where did that come? Why did you feel you had to add psycho-behavioral in front of vision enhancement?
That was due more, or was influenced, shall I say, by, you know who I mean.
We talked about Elliot Forrest earlier.
There
Yeah,
we're talking.
Yeah.
Elliot Forrest. He was the one that I used to discuss this with. There wasn't anybody else for me to talk to
Yeah.
that understood any of this. And Elliot was a very quiet individual,
Mhm.
had an awful lot going on up here. You see, these vision anomalies that take place, that so-and-so comes in and is myopic, two-diopter myope.
Mm-hmm.
How did they learn to be a myope?
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn it.
Yeah.
And they found ways to learn, but they were able to do these things was based on the fact that they knew how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And if they learned how to be myopic, that's where the occasion came for them to be a better learner.
Okay.
Learning how to learn took place by them becoming a myope.
This is simply the avenue that they chose to go down as they were applying their learning to learn
Right.
was to apply it to changing and becoming a myope. In your writings, Al, and in much of your presentation, you've talked about something called dysrelatia, where there's a mismatch in the relationships that people are seeing, particularly, again, like you were talking about, as they look through one eye and then look through the other eye. Can you talk about this term, what it means to you, and how it's become a cornerstone of your thinking?
Dysrelatia is a combination of two Latin words. I took Latin in high school, so I know something about Latin. The dysrelatia is from Latin is dis, which means hard to, and relatia means making relationships. It's self-explanatory. Doesn't tell you how to cure it. Doesn't tell you anything about the history of it, or anything about it. Only it to describe a person who is having trouble
Making
thinking.
matches, making relationships, thinking.
Thinking is based upon making matches. One of the things that I have a large family, and I'm so happy to see my son-in-laws, my daughter-in-laws, the whole McGilla following the things that I've been advocating.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is there must be a consequence for no matter what. It's a good consequence, fine, give them all the credit in the world. They were bad or it wasn't a good thing, that the consequence. You said you're going to punish them, and damn it, punish them. Don't tell them that you're going to do it, or don't tell them to wait till Daddy comes home. And this is important because this is how the kid learns to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not responsible, he can't do all the things he wants to do. Learning how to learn is one of those things that happens because they become more honest with themselves. And you start to hear them sometimes say, I didn't mean that. They're thinking it over.
Mm-hmm.
But dysrelatia is, to me, the same as learning how to learn. They're all part of the same thing.
Dysrelatia would be having not learned how to learn.
That's right.
Okay. When you learn how to learn, there's then no more dysrelatia. Now you have relatia.
Okay, you're right. Dysrelatia no longer applies to that individual because they see the truth as the truth is, and they look at things differently.
They learn to make those relationships, keep those relationships,
Right.
and they become a foundation on which they can build.
The rest of their life. Everything that's pertinent in their life to living, it's all part of it on there.
Thank you.
You know, I want to stress that this that I'm talking about is a passion. And I have to be very careful not to bring in things that are brought in by passion. But I have a passion about this because it's so important to every individual's life to be able to live the way I'm living now, the way my wife is living, the way our children and grandchildren, because they're following these precepts. What more can I tell you? That's it.
Al, an important part of the way you approach working with patients with your psycho-behavioral vision enhancement really revolves around truth and truthfulness. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, one of the things that I want to bring out about that is that optometry basically works with symptoms, not with the cause. If they work with the cause, the symptom just disappears. It's no longer there. Like the problem one has with dysrelatia, which their problem is they can't understand the words in relation to what they're doing or relate the words to something that they're not doing and bring it in thought. And when they start to change, because they see that 2 and 2 is 4, no matter how you write it, no matter where you put it or whatever you do, when they get to the realization that these things are truthful because they fit everything, everything, and you don't have a problem with it. And in terms of making it fit, as soon as you try to make it fit, you've lost the basic of the whole thing. Don't make it fit. Let them find the fit themselves.
Arrange the conditions so that they can find the fit.
Those are the right words. That's right. Arrange condition. And so you do it with anything. It can be done with making yourself myopic. Or I don't know if it will become with astigmatism the same way. I don't know. But I've seen it happen which I'm sure you have felt many times, that this kid is a myope, but he's so smart, but he's a myope. And many of the myopic people are good students, automatically. Why? Because they learned to solve a problem that no one else showed them how to do. They did it on their own. And that's the result of it.
So in that instance, the adaptation, the change they made, was a way that they demonstrated their learning.
It's in there if you know how to look for it. And if it's myopia, help them, well then so be it. That's what it is. There's nothing wrong being a myope.
Right.
But my feeling and impression through school, after school, in the office, it was nasty to be a myope. You don't you put on plus lenses so they don't become myopic.
Yeah, we want to prevent that. That's
right.
Bad.
Yeah. So by putting on more plus, they make it more myopic because they go back to their old way of doing things. And they learn how to be more myopic.
You talk about learning how to learn.
Right.
And that's a critical thing in the development of a full, comprehensive, well-balanced vision. You've got to first learn how to learn.
Right.
How did you help people? How did your vision therapy program, the way you worked with it, help people learn how to learn?
I changed what Emil gave me to do to fit my niche. And the niche was to solve problems, puzzles, anything. With a young child that you're working with, 4, 5, 6 years old, puzzles. Things they can see. They see how the parts fit in, and they start to get the idea about it. And if you can get the child or the individual curious of the outcome of things like that, they'll become a better learner on their own because they start to see how things fit together.
So you would set these puzzles, and by puzzles you meant actual physical puzzles, but you also meant puzzle as in just some kind of problem to solve. There's a little thing that they could work with. It would spark their curiosity. That would give them the energy to work through and move to try to work on something.
Give him the attitude that he needs to be curious, to want to solve this problem, and not to say, I can't do it. Give me something easier or along that line. If you have children, you know how they learn to give up at first. In case you can encourage them, we'll try to solve it. See if you, and you have to encourage somebody. Why? So they can experience the success of being successful.
That's a very important thing, to experience the success of being successful.
Yeah, right.
That's very well stated.
And if they work for that goal, they automatically apply that to everything they do.
Now, learning is one of those terms that's can evoke many different things. Can you tell me some of some of the qualities that you look for in learning? What are the qualities of learning that you're looking for?
Well, the main quality I'm looking for is that the individual, whether it be a child or adult, is starting to derive pleasure from solving a problem. Because that's what life is. Every step of the way is another problem, and it all depends how you treat it. See, now, my tendency was I had a terrible temper, and if I couldn't do it, and so I'd take it, I'd say, I don't want to do that. And I got away with it.
Yeah.
If I didn't get away with it, I'm learning. If I'm learning the right thing.
In that way, you were using the tantrum as a way to avoid actually going through the learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you talk in your book and in other things about many other ways that people block the learning.
They for themselves.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
They whine.
They cry.
They cry.
I'll tell my mother.
Or they just throw an answer at you and hope you accept it.
Yeah. That's part of the disrelation chapter, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they can't possibly be successful in doing that because they're working at the wrong thing. They're working with a symptom and not the problem.
Yeah, you brought that up. We've done some, or I've done some reading and some things called systems thinking, which I think is what you're getting at, is that on the top you're dealing with the surface aspect of a problem,
Right.
The symptom. And you already mentioned that too many in our profession just seem to deal with the symptom.
Right.
The minus lens for the myopia,
Right.
the nearsightedness,
Or-
which compensates for the problem. But you're talking about trying to get at the underlying cause. What's really the driving the problem, the symptom that's up here, and you're talking about helping the person get down here to deal with that cause.
They have to feel it. So it's helping the person feel it. Then, by asking them at those times, how did that feel? Did you feel anything? I talk about feel. Whoever heard of feel with eyes? Well, are they crazy?
Right.
Yeah, it's an awful lot.
Now, you also said that they could help learn this feeling by doing comparisons, monocular comparisons between how they view things, where they view things in space, how big they are.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about some of these size perception differences, distance perception differences.
Yeah, right. There's a word I'm trying to think of that indicates that and talk about indicates it and leaves it to the person to finish doing the job on themselves. That talking to them about how they feel about it, did they feel good? Did you solve a problem? And what do you mean solve a problem? Never solved a problem in my life. You know, I go ask my mother or father what to do or something of that order. No, you got to do it on your own. But that doesn't mean a thing to them to say you got to do it. Do what on your own? You have to learn how to learn. They never learned how to learn to begin with. How can I expect them to pick it up at that point? You have to do it by example. If you do it with puzzles, that's one way of getting an example. Being rational is another thing that you talk about. That's more a thing of the mind, they being rational. But when you see them pick up the least bit on that, try to explore it. You're a good explorer. And so you would explore it and find it and help these people by getting them to help themselves.
Yeah.
That's basically where you want to go. Get them to help, whether you know it or not. And when I say that, I smile to myself because for a long time, a number of years, I didn't know why people got better. I couldn't figure it out because I was doing what I thought was the right thing to do. And when I switched and started to work on what I thought were the problems, the symptoms disappeared. And so he no longer had this dysrelatia.
Right.
It walked away from him. So you can't put a name on something that becomes a label. And if you label me as being a genius, I'm going to work hard. And if you label me as stupid,
Yeah.
I'm going to work just as hard being stupid.
Right. Right. Becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll become what you labeled me to be.
Yes, right. And what right did I have to label you?
Yeah.
That's very important. I don't want labels for anybody.
So optometrically as well, you avoided the use of the labels.
Absolutely.
If a patient wanted to do vision enhancement with you, they enrolled in vision enhancement not because they wore a label.
No. The label could be something so far removed, actually, if they're going to get a label on it, it wouldn't mean anything anyhow. But in those cases where they're out and out, like a mother says to a child when he couldn't do his homework, "You're so stupid, you should have learned that in the school." Well, self-fulfilling prophecy, he'll learn to be stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to learn to be that stupid. It doesn't just come. You have to learn.
When a prospective patient would come to you, Al, how would you make a decision of whether or not this person could benefit from the psychobehavioral visual enhancement?
My philosophy, anybody can be helped, anybody, but they have to want to.
Yeah.
If they're not willing to take my guidelines, I want a half hour, 5 days a week for 1 year, and they don't want to do that, then they say, forget about it. You know, it's surprising how few people were turned away by that. They still wanted to do it because they wanted the results. Yeah. That's what I work on.
Well, you almost were dangling the carrot out there a little far and say, this is something worth working for. And in essence, you were setting the stage for the success, just like you said the parents maybe were setting the stage for failure in some way.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You were setting the stage for success there. But you use lenses in some of the practices in terms of providing some of the little problems for them to work with.
Yes, that's what the lenses are, to create problems. For instance, pitch back, you know, when you throw and hit this one eye. One eye, do it with the right eye 5 times, 10 times, now do it with the left eye, and watch to see where the ball goes. If on the first shot they hit it in the middle, forget it. You haven't got a case to go to that. But that's very unusual. But if you put a lens on them now, a prism lens, let's say a 4 or 5 diopter base, and so put that on them and ask them to do it again. And if they hit it, if they don't hit it the first time or the second time or the third time, up to 20 times, well, you know, you've got a hard learner.
Not learning,
Not learning a thing from it. So I use that partially in the office to see how they put things together in relation to learning something different. I would use 15 diopter prisms as another thing. Do they see movement of the field? Does the field move? Does the object move? I do it monocularly. I do it base up, base down, right? Any different way I can think of to make it different. And what can they do visually to help themselves?
How often during your vision enhancement program would you sit back down with the patient and go back through some of the diagnostic things?
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months.
Yeah. We have both. If it's a child, then both parents have to be there. If both parents can't come, they've got to give me a damn good reason why they can't be there. They've got to be there or I won't take this as a patient. And, you know, I've had people make comments about that. You don't expect everybody to be able. No, I don't expect anything. It's up to you. If you want the benefits of what I have to give, fine. we do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I'm an optometry school student now.
Right.
Tell me what else is out there. What you're so excited about. Why should I want to follow Al Shankman's footsteps?
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, and I never thought it was going to happen. And I still say I won't believe it until I see it.
See it in print. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the thing is, I have to direct what we did as part of the examination. I give them an example. For instance, alternative, and one is larger than the other. I'd say to them, give it out and out to them. Do you think that you would be able to get the two to go together, one on top of the other, and be there comfortably, that you can read and do all the things you want? Well, no, it doesn't. Who can say that they can do it? That have a disparity that way and get away with it, or would do what they thought would work with that. And I picked something like aphoria, adduction, whatever, to point out to them, those are symptoms. They're not the cause, but they're always there because they're a symptom. Some people get headaches. Some people get doubling, because, you go through the gamut. Whatever you can find that would fit, you point out to them, that's not normal, and it takes more energy to do that than to do it the right way if you could learn how. That's actually what happens.
Are there a couple of patients that come to mind that they took you in a different direction than you ever thought?
Yeah.
Tell me about a couple of those.
Well, one of them is Tom Black.
Okay.
Tom Black is a patient now of Randy's. Since he didn't like Mark that I sold the practice to, but that I couldn't care. I'm still friends with Tom Black. And Tom wrote me the most beautiful letter saying me how well it was and how good it was and was for him, and helped him so much, particularly in his golf game. It doesn't matter where you go. It helps something. Even if you don't look for it, eventually something turns up and shows that you did it. So many faces flashing.
Yeah.
Tom's wife, the whole family were patients, 2 girls and the mother and father. And Tom and Lisa still go to Randy, which to me I find is very rewarding.
Yeah.
Let me see, offhand it's hard for me to bring them up, but the last chapter in the book are letters from people that I took verbatim. I didn't ask them for it. They just sent it to me, like the woman who was trying to get through college. And every semester, just before the last month, she gets sick.
Yeah.
And it was such a pleasure to hear from her. She graduated. She really did. She's in her 40s.
Sounds like something you add to your list of 12.
Yeah.
It's an avoidance way. It's
right.
almost letting oneself get sick so they didn't have to finish.
Then they didn't have to. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely it was.
That
Definitely.
goes in your list of 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the little boy who was crying when I'd asked him to do something, I think he was about 7, 8 years old, he was crying and crying. What's the matter? I never gave him sympathy when they did complain like that. I say, what's the problem? He said, I don't know what to do. See, I'd given him instructions I don't know how many times.
Right.
And he couldn't fathom, he couldn't solve what he had to do that way. So by crying, he figured I'd stop asking him. But he guessed wrong. I wasn't going to stop. Wasn't going to stop. And that's true with a number of those things that I got from other people, from patients, little ones, old ones. They taught me.
If you looked into your crystal ball and looked 10, 20 years in the future, what do you hope you would see in that crystal ball?
Well, since they're talking about screening of kids, and there's an editorial in the book in the JBO about that screening would be something of the past. Why do I feel that way? Because screening was invented for the kids who had problems not seeing in the distance. Those are the kids that need it the least. Leave them alone, let them become more myopic, they're good students, period. But no, they're not going to do that. They're going to work on the symptoms of the disparity, either on the chart or whatever it is they're going to do more. And they're going to work with the disparity, possibly driving him into amblyopia or anisometropia. And they have done it by using lenses improperly.
Improperly, right. So in the crystal ball, one of the things you see and hope you see in there is that we're not doing screenings anymore. People are doing proper, full evaluations.
It wouldn't mean a thing because they've got to hook into this philosophy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to them.
Anything else you would like to see in that ball?
I would like to see that they took my philosophy seriously and try it. That's all I ask. Try it on a patient. Doesn't have to be yourself, but on a patient that you see has a problem, and see if it works. Having faith and confidence that it's going to work, rather than saying, I don't believe it, and I'll do it because, never mind. Don't do me any favors.
But you also have said that the proper way to get into your philosophy, one can look at the book and read it, but that's an intellectual. The real way is to become a patient of somebody who is following that philosophy.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody that you can totally dislike because you don't like his ethics or whatever it is. And it doesn't matter who he is, who she is.
Who he or she is. As long as they're following this kind of system that helps you learn, to know about it, to be aware, and then to start to see these differences and use that as a basis for finding the truth in what you see.
Yeah, it's the basis for the truth. But you know, if truth is truth, there's only one. When there's two, it's no longer the truth.
That's how the two must come together. When they do, there's one truth.
On their own.
And it's correct.
Yeah.
We arrange conditions to allow that to occur.
Yeah, and you know, that may sound like it's ridiculous to a degree. One of the reasons is you can envision yourself as being with this patient forever and ever until that. It happens quicker than you think, depending upon at what stage they're in. Like a little kid is in the beginning stages of not being able to learn. What are you going to do with them? You have to give him solid things to work with so he can take it and take this ball and put it over to the right here where you want it to be, and now you want to put it to the left and he doesn't know which right and left is or something. There's so many different things you can do, and those things they have at schools and also in people can buy them at the children's store. The puzzles. Doesn't matter what kind of a puzzle. Can they do it themselves? And such gratification you can't imagine when a child finds that, I didn't mention this earlier. One of the main reasons for my getting into this work was that in third grade, I remember exactly, I'm not sure if it was second or third grade, But I remember exactly when I was asked to read out loud,
Mm-hmm.
and I picked up the book and I looked at it and looked at it. How come that's so different? This means the same thing as that, the words. And so all of a sudden I broke the
code.
The what?
Broke the code.
Right, that's what I mean. Broke the code. It broke by itself. I wasn't looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was able to read. Until then I
But
was...
that teacher presented you with the problem.
She didn't know that.
No, but she did.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Sometimes unknowingly they can.
Oh, it's
A lot of it happens unknowingly.
It happens very often.
Mm-hmm.
Very often. Yeah. I have my own 6 children. I have contact with 5 of them. And those 5 are just wonderful people.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to to acknowledge the fact they're my children anytime.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime. And Lynn's too were mine too. And it's the way they look at things and how pleased they are when I am better,
Mm-hmm.
when I am able to do things. Their genuine love
Mm-hmm.
comes through. That's all. And that's the one thing about truth.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one truth, and if you say it's this and I say it's that, I don't know who the truth is.
We haven't found it yet.
But we haven't found it.
Yeah.
And so I haven't learned how to acknowledge to you that my way is not that as good as I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
That your way is better. You know, that takes an awful lot on a person
It does.
to do that, a lot of responsibility, to make a change like that. And yet, when it happens, many times, it just happens. Nobody knows it's there till all of a sudden you get the feeling this person is different.
Yeah. Al, I want to thank you. It's very obvious that your love for what you do and what you did for so many years
Right.
and have dedicated yourself really comes through. Thank you.
I am glad that you feel it comes through and that I did not expect this to be perpetuated, my way of doing things. And I had just said to Lynn the other day, I don't know what will happen to it, but I assume it will just die out, forget about it. You're making it live. Without you, it wouldn't have happened. So I want to tell you my appreciation.
I got it loud and clear. You're
Good.
welcome.
Good.